Okay, so as Michael was describing, well, I don't know if he mentioned it, that the reservoir is actually for 6 months of emergency water supply for this for the city of Los Angeles. So all of Southern California. Okay, so the idea being, of course, there's a big emergency, and we can get, we would all be depending on this reservoir. We always conceived of the site as a demonstration, as a really important way of communicating to the visitors everything one could, from a sustainability perspective, how to live light on the land, how to celebrate the agriculture from this area of the state, and how to celebrate and acknowledge how water gets to us in the urban areas, but also the beauty of water. So we came up with a way of describing sort of an experience. Oh, yes. The space button? Okay. And so we had a series of exhibits that actually, for example, here you'd have the California Aqueduct, and these would be a series, basically a braided stream, and then a series of paleontological exhibits across the site. So, space button is not cooperating, Michael, there. No. Oh, there you go. So, this is just some inspiration, what the aqueduct, the braided stream. I don't know if all of you know that in Southern California, of course, we don't have regular rivers. It's basically, they're seasonal rivers, and they happen to move throughout the lowest point of a valley, and they moved around. In olden days, when the urban areas hadn't been developed, they just kind of moved around. Like in the LA Basin, they would move around downtown, sometimes one mile, one way or another. So we wanted to really explain what a braided stream was about. And here it is, a braided stream. And so if it's not raining or whatever, there's actually soil there. And here's the real braided stream. And what we did is we used the spoils from the work in creating the dams, and actually created a way, and basically it's the drainage course for the project. And so instead of hiding it in a pipe, we're actually using it, and it becomes a part of the landscape. And there's a group of young people visiting the LEED accredited museum, and they're walking through the braided stream. And we also did a California friendly demonstration garden, and that's a term that was coined by the Department of Water and Power. And basically it means not just native plants, but plants that don't need very much water. And as you all know, we're in a big water crisis in Southern California. And so California-friendly plants become incredibly important. Here is a visitor actually appreciating some of the LEED accredited accreditation signage, trying to understand what they're looking at. Actually, amazingly enough, and I guess if there's multi-benefit to all these projects, the fact that somebody's actually getting married here is a good sign. That was nice vegetation that was in bloom, Fremontodendron. It makes me excited when I see them. Another project that I want to talk about that relates to the whole water system is the LA River Revitalization Master Plan. And again, now I've talked about the braided streams. That was the LA River. How many of you know where the LA River is?
We're going on a field trip there.
You are? Okay. There's really only about 8 of you who know where the LA River is, so I'm glad you're going on a field trip. It's I happen to think it's beautiful, but it's different. How many of you come from Southern California? Okay. How many of you come from Northern California? How many of you come from the middle of the country? Okay. How many of you come from the East Coast? How many of you come from other countries? Interesting. Okay. Just interesting. Because rivers in other countries and probably even in other parts of the country look very different, and they don't typically have a governor and a motorcycle in them either. So when we think of the LA River and the work that we've done along the river, one of the things we look at, and from a sustainability perspective, in terms of what the world looks to Los Angeles is, there's a tremendous responsibility, because through the movies, Hollywood conveys this notion that anything that they do in Los Angeles is okay to do, and in fact it's worse. You want to do what people do in Los Angeles. Everybody wants their own little paradise. I mean, in China and Japan, people started building, sort of estates as opposed to consolidating development. And so this is one of the responsibilities we feel we have in sharing with the world good planning. And now what we're trying to do is undo the bad planning, which was what happened to the river here, which is it was channelized. This is the whole of the county and the Santa Monica Mountains, the St. Gabriel Mountains, and basically this is the channelization of the river. It had other courses in the past, and we worked on 32 miles of the river. And watersheds. All of you know what a watershed is? Pretty much? Well, okay. Well, it's basically the controlled area that is controlled by sort of a rise in topography. And here you see all the water goes into this area through these tributaries. The white is the LA watershed. Then there's Bayona Creek, Malibu Creek, Dominguez Channel, and San Gabriel River watershed. So there's 5 watersheds in the county of Los Angeles. This is what our river looks like. Its birthplace is right here at the headwaters at Canoga Park High School. Hello. And here, as it's coming through Studio City and Ferraro Fields and Griffith Park, as it was forced to turn, and then as it's going through Confluence in downtown. And what were the goals? And the reason, by the way, that the river was channelized was because in the late 1940s there were these huge floods. And so people who were living in areas adjacent to the river, like around Studio City, all started losing their homes. And certainly the elected officials, the agencies are all there to protect our health and well-being. And so in order to protect the community, the neighbors from flooding, the Corps of Engineers came forward with a plan to use the concrete and basically harness the river and do what they do best, is to create this really efficient system of getting water all the way down to the ocean as fast as possible. Of course, along with that came a lot of pollutants, and eventually so many pollutants that the ocean started being tremendously impacted. And because of many federal regulations, now all of a sudden there was going to be some fines that were going to be levied all across the country. These are federal regulations. If you are in control of how water gets into your river, and the quality of water that you deliver to the ocean is going to be basically monitored. And they're called TMDLs, total maximum daily loads. And if you have all these, this bad water quality, you're going to pay big fines. So all these cities got their act together and they said, okay, well, if I'm going to do something about this issue, I might as well solve other problems while I'm on my way. And in doing that, I could create parks, I could create new communities, I could deal with this asset in a different way. So these are the goals, and it's about greening neighborhoods, creating value, and that means in terms of improving water quality, and also capturing opportunities in terms of civic pride. How can people celebrate the river and not just think about it as sort of a dumping ground? and revitalizing the river by enhancing flood storage and water quality and public access. Right now, by the way, if you do go visit the river, you're trespassing and it's an illegal act. But you can do it anyway. So here you see kind of what our, the goals were to do a continuous greenway, to work with the tributaries and extend into the watershed, because we were supposed to just study 200 feet on either side of the river, which all the environmentalists like Andy Lipkis were complaining. I mean, how can you possibly study a river? First of all, we were only studying 32 out of 54 miles because the city and the county couldn't politically get themselves on the same page. But we were also only studying 250, 300 feet on either side because they couldn't afford to do a bigger, more robust study. So we kind of went beyond our study area anyway, and at least in the initial efforts, started looking at the opportunities. And this is the kind of thing you do when you're doing community work and you're doing this kind of sustainability work. You're trying to educate the community about the issues and help them understand decisions they might be able to make along the way, some of which might be when you vote. When you go out and you vote, whether you might be voting on a local election or you might be voting on a national election. What are the issues that you're kind of getting engaged in? And so here you see the whole process. This is actually a model of what a watershed is for children during those meetings, so they also get to understand. And of course, what happened was that in terms of this particular study, that there were a lot of nonprofits and people like Friends of the LA River who were very involved. And you can see just by the major comments that people really understood the issues and were pretty sophisticated. Here you see what that Canoga Park entrance looked like. And this is the river as it goes through the basin. And this was what the river the area near downtown used to look like before it got channelized. Here you see the freeway grid and the river below. By the way, the river is the only piece of infrastructure that's on grade that goes the 54 miles. Everything else, the thousands of miles of freeway, all hover above us. Nothing's on grade. So you have this incredible disconnection with nature. Just a quick thing, this is what right now the channel looks like. This is what the channel, if you were to take all the concrete out, this is how wide it would be. So it's actually impossible to take all the concrete out because you would be displacing many, many people. This is kind of this network that we're proposing where you're connecting schools and libraries and parks to the river. So you have a whole new set of networks. And on the way, you're, of course, creating green streets, and you're planting many more trees, so you're creating a sort of a new paradigm for Los Angeles with an urban forest that's robust, and that wherever you see sycamores, you know you can get down to the river and get there comfortably, and that it's not always about 32 miles. Sometimes it's about your neighborhood. It's the neighborhood in Atwater or in Studio City, and like you can do an 8-mile loop, for example, and that you make it easy to get on the river and then across a bridge and back over. Has anybody ever tried to go on the LA River on their bicycle?
I have a manhole cover in my backyard. You can go from my backyard to the LA River.
Through your manhole?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a little dangerous. Don't tell anybody else that. So this is what it could look like. You know, in other parts of the world, they've done this. Boston, Paris, other cities. This is in Elysian Park, and here you are having to deal with rail lines that you can consolidate. And despite many of the rail management folks, of course, you could actually still keep the rail and be able to negotiate that access if you had a park up in this area, for example, in Broadway. Or the notion that in one of the more industrial areas, and there are, let's say a few hundred people working here, instead of having this kind of access, that you could have that kind of access, and that this becomes now a part of the city, and so that you face the river instead of giving you its back. And the streets and the potential open parks that could exist along it, and here you see up in Studio City where you could actually make a major change and make it feel more like a river by planting and adding access, and enhancing the identity by having lots of bridges so you can always get across and you're not scared, because sometimes it's like 2 or 3 miles between the big arterial or vehicular bridges, so you want to make it more comfortable. And what you could do in terms of art, and where we are right now is that it was adopted as a plan 2 years ago now. Ooh. And there is a river unit within the planning department, and that there's there's a foundation and a corporation that have been founded, and that there is now, just like with LEED, as basically a point system. If you are a developer and you want to do something within 2 blocks of the river, you have to be able to get a certain number of points related to green building, related to parking, related to how you deal with your stormwater, of course. And so we're really excited that it's gotten to this point, and that the river unit and the people who work in the river unit are very passionate about this project. They actually, are constantly working. They're working full time on trying to make a lot of these projects happen, buying land, working in Washington to try to get funding, and further developing the plan. And that's in our work, that's really important, is that when you do a larger scale master plan than, let's say, a project that you actually build, that what you're doing is developing a framework. So from a sustainability point of view, what you're trying to do is develop a framework so that different projects can start happening, and that there's a process that identifies the issues related to permeable paving, related to canopy, relating to all the different issues that that need to be addressed, and in terms of sustainability. I'm working on most of these projects. You work on with teams, large teams of people, urban ecologists, hydrologists. The people who deal with rivers are called fluvial geomorphologists. I love that I could say that really quickly now. And you're always working. Sometimes you also work with architects, other landscape architects, if the projects are really large. And everybody brings a slightly different perspective to these projects, and of course expertise, technical expertise. This is the Orange County Great Park. Anybody here from Orange County? Anybody here knows where the El Toro Marine Base is? Anybody here been on the Orange Balloon? Yay! Very good. Anyway, the Orange County Great Park is 1,300 acres, and Central Park is 843 acres. So the Great Park is actually almost twice as big as Central Park. A significant piece of open space. Here you see this is the Orange Curtain right here, and this is Orange County right here. And it connects. So one of the first sustainability aspects of this is that it manages, by fluke, an old Navy base, happens to basically connect the 2 wilderness areas. So there are many, many critters that have been run over as they're trying to go through 2, 3 freeways to get to this second, back and forth, that now are going to be able to connect. So that's one of the first achievements. So this, and from a cultural, social, economic perspective, it's right smack in the middle of the county. It's also, it has the opportunity of really bringing the community together, a very suburban community, the antithesis, I guess, in a way, of sustainability. So this is what it looks like, very flat. And it was closed a number of years ago and then purchased by the Lennar Corporation with an agreement that of the 4,400 acres, 1,300 acres would be at the heart of the new community and a destination for the region. So as you can see, and it was a competition, many of the types of projects that we all work on are competitions. And here you see a canyon, 2.5-mile canyon. This is the one that connects the two areas. A sports park area, a cultural district with sites for several museums and an amphitheater, a botanical garden, and then a more agricultural zone, the Fields and Memorial, and an arboretum, a bosque. And this is a grading, massing study of what that would look like from the engineers. Again, the project, the vision, sort of a more sort of up-close view. And what our sustainability goals were. And you always think about, you have to be very methodical about this. We actually have a sustainability calculator. So just like you saw with the river, that form to fill out when you're going for a permit, here we were hoping to sort of check our team and how well we were doing with a sustainability calculator. And here you see the different ways we want to make sure that we are addressing sustainability issues related to energy, nature, materials, people, and water, and that it starts conceptually with personal health. If you're healthy, you eat well, you do exercise, you're emotionally healthy, that you start connecting to your region because you start understanding your connections, and that eventually that leads you to become a better steward and connecting to the globe. And it's a different way than the way sustainability is usually looked at, which is 3 circles that kind of interconnect. We were thinking you really start kind of internally relating, understanding, educating yourself, and then it moves out that way. And again, we call this the living park, and meaning that the park itself and the way it's developed starts relating to the community at large. So any of the activities that happen in the park relate to understanding sustainability, or for example, citizen science programs, so people understand how many birds are coming back. This used to be this is a place where large airplanes used to come and go. There were no birds there, and there are not too many trees there. But in the future, for example, you could monitor that. And that level of understanding starts getting back to the schools. So, for example, you could have little cameras at your school, in your elementary school, that starts looking at the nest of the new eagles that are starting to be born. So that there's this connectivity, and that we always think of the park infrastructure and the neighborhood connections as a way of really understanding sustainability. This is getting into the habitats and some of the natural systems. Transportation, we called it, which for Orange County, a little unusual, but basically it's basically park once and spend the day. So you either get there by Amtrak and Metrolink, where there is a stop, or you park along the edges of the park. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 parking lots. And no, this was a fight not to have any cars in the center of the site, but a fight that we won on, with the argument that from a sustainability perspective, if you really wanted to restore habitat and you really wanted to get people doing exercise, they got to park their car and start getting out there and really engaging. And this is Central Park, and these are the beauty. This is the beauty and the real connection in the city to nature. And imagine if Central Park wasn't there. And we actually present this. We used to present this to the naysayers on the park as an idea. And the next piece of work on that is that in this park, many people want to do other programs than what we think are desirable given our sustainability mission. So we show this caricature about what Central Park would have looked like if every proposal that ever came forward over the last 100 years would have gotten built, which incidentally is the reason that the reservoir was just called the Jackie Onassis Jackie Kennedy Onassis Reservoir is because many people had ideas of what that reservoir should be, so the managers of the park said, we better deal with it, and they got a donation and they got basically a designation. Otherwise, they were going to cover it over and build other things on it. And this is the ultimate in community outreach. In order to help the community understand what it is we were planning, we actually had a large plan of the project, and people could walk around, and then they had like a passport, and they could identify on the things that they felt good about or not good about, that they needed more help understanding, and it became an unbelievable tool in helping people to understand the elements of the park. And I think that's basically where I'd like to conclude and open it up to questions.